available in paperback and e-readers. E-Steam Cancel Vacation. Hell's aspiring angel takes on a social justice social media mob looking to cancel her in this all-new E-Steam series adventure. Get E-Steam Cancel Vacation in paperback and e-readers today. Better get the coleslaw, y'all, cause we're having us a barbecue. Comedian Charleston White was attacked on stage while he was doing a show at a comedy club in Texas.
You showing your goddamn head. Push that ass, nigga. Push that ass. Look at Tom.
Now, Charleston White was performing at an event he had been booked for in Crockett, Texas, and as he was performing his set at this event, he questioned the validity of the 2020 NBA Finals, where the Los Angeles Lakers, led by LeBron James at the time and Anthony Davis, won and beat the Miami Heat. And as Charleston White made his observations of the NBA Finals of 2020, which were played under the Dome in Florida, due to the COVID-19 pandemic being questioned as related to their validity, this is where two individuals in the audience got upset regarding Charleston White's speculated conspiracy theory and began heckling the comedian. Now, as these two individuals began heckling Charleston White, he began making retorts at them, and as they went back and forth with each other, the individuals in the audience began to get emotional. And as they got emotional, they began to charge towards the stage and started making threats. And as they made threats, Charleston White continued to go back and forth with them, and at one point picked up a poinsettia plant that had been set on the stage. And as he picked up this plant and threw it at one of the individuals, this is where his nephew then decided to charge up on the stage and look to attack Charleston White. And Charleston White, in defending himself, picked up a chair to protect himself. However, this individual moved quickly and tackled Charleston White on the stage, and security had to come and break up the entire event, where Charleston White was pulled away, making threats to sue the individual nephew and his uncle as related to the alleged assault they perpetrated on him. Now, this entire incident, I would say, definitely fits the pattern and profile for beta male behavior that I talk about in my book, The Man Crisis, and is a textbook example of what happens when males do not know how to navigate through their emotions. Now, with comedy, it is a thing that you have to have a thick skin for, and sadly, it looks like to me that the two individuals who went to this comedy club did not have a thick enough skin to be able to take the jokes that Charleston White was making as related to his set, making an observation regarding the Los Angeles Lakers. And these two individuals, because they had very thin skin as related to hearing anything negative about the Los Angeles Lakers, wound up getting so emotional that they wanted to go out here and attack Charleston White regarding the jokes he was making about the Los Angeles Lakers and the conspiracy theory he was speculating as related to the validity of them winning the NBA Finals. And that just shows me how weak many of these people have become ever since the pandemic as related to humor. And it seems like these days you just can't make a joke these days because so many people have such thin skin that any little thing triggers them emotionally. And as they get triggered, they start to react emotionally and look to act on their impulses without ever thinking about the consequences of their actions. And that is a very scary thing for a comedian to run into, because a comedian's job is to go out here and make observations regarding the state of the world and have the audience that they can have enough free thinking to understand that this comedian's observations and opinions are not the only opinion. Now, what happened here on the stage is part of a disturbing trend that Gboot2786 and I have talked about on his show, where we have individuals who get upset whenever they hear a comedian making an observation regarding their set. And because these people have such thin skin, what they do is look to start yelling at the comedian, and in some cases start looking to charge the stage to attack a comedian for just doing their job. And that's really scary as I see it as related to comedy, because if we got people who are getting upset about jokes, that really shows us our society is in a bad place, because comedy is an indicator to the state of a society's stability. And if people are not having a strong enough resolve or a strong enough discipline to be able to navigate through their emotions when a comedian makes a joke, then we have a problem with our society, because it shows that our society's stability is extremely fragile. Because if our people cannot handle a joke, then we are nearly heading towards the roads of fascism and towards dictatorship. Because when you have people who have no semblance of self-control and no semblance of discipline to navigate through their emotions as related to a joke about an NBA team that is basically, that NBA Finals is in the books right now, and those players have already gotten their championship rings and have already gotten their millions of dollars, then it really shows me that some people are, again, just too sensitive as related to a joke, and they're taking things way too personally. Again, LeBron James and Anthony Davis already have their rings as related to this championship. It's in the books 3 years ago, but this individual is so emotionally invested in the Lakers that he cannot take a joke from a guy like Charleston White as related to this whole comedy event. And he goes up and attacks Charleston White, which is really shows how out of control he is, and shows me that we have a real serious problem in our country. Again, this is not the first time this has happened. I mean, Gboot2786 showed me multiple videos of individuals jumping up on stage. And when you've got people jumping up on stage, that really shows me, one, there's a serious security issue at these comedy clubs, and two, we've got a real serious issue as related to people lacking discipline and lacking self-control. Because a lot of these people who got upset at these comedy clubs, like they did with Charleston White, they wouldn't last 5 seconds in the 1980s, where there was no political correctness. I mean, these people would not last 5 minutes in a comedy club with legendary comedians like Eddie Murphy or Andrew Dice Clay or the late Sam Kinison or Elaine Boozler. I mean, you wouldn't last 5 seconds in a comedy club with these individuals, because these comedians back then, they were raw, and they were so raw that they had no sensitivity whatsoever. And they would go out here and make fun of stuff that would basically curl the toes of people of today. I mean, people of today, you could not get through comedy sets, because back then, those comedians, they would just go after all kinds of subjects, and they would go hard in the paint in all of those subjects. So these people wouldn't last in those comedy clubs, where you had to hear guys like Richard Pryor going hard, hearing guys like Andrew Dice Clay going hard, hearing guys like Eddie Murphy going hard, or hearing Elaine Boozler or the late Sam Kinison. And this is just the tip of the iceberg for the comedians back then, because these comedians were no joke back then. But back in the 80s, kids like me grew up and we listened to these guys get profane. We listened to them talk about all sorts of sensitive subjects. And most of us Gen Xers, it basically rolled off our backs because we understood that whatever a person says really means nothing as related to our lives. And because we understood that what that comedian says was just part of their set, it was business, we never took it that personally. And that's really sad, because I mean, I don't even think many of these people today could handle many of the 90s comedians like Bernie Mac. I mean, a Bernie Mac set would possibly set these people off, but it just shows me how fragile people have become as related to dealing with things in this world. Now, when you're going to a comedy club, you have to understand that anything is going to be on that comedian's radar for them to make a jab at or take a joke at. And I would think that if you go to a comedy club, you would understand this, but sadly people don't understand this. And because they don't understand this, what they're doing is rushing the stage whenever they hear something they don't like. And that's just not what you do when you go to a comedy club. No, you have to go into a comedy club with an open mind. And as you go in there with an open mind, you have to understand that this comedian is just making jokes about what they see. And if they're out here making jokes about what they see, you got to understand this is how they see the world. And if you don't like what you see as related to a comedy club, then maybe you shouldn't be there. And when I look at those two beta males who went to this comedy club, they definitely shouldn't have come to that club, because you should know that Charleston White was going to go out here and cook and roast everything. And if you came there thinking he was just going to go out here and say, why did the chicken cross the road to get to the other side, you're in the wrong place to be. Now, I am no fan of Charleston White. Basically, I believe that he's a minstrel, and he's a minstrel who's gone out here and made a lot of anti-black statements as related to his personal politics, but I will stand and defend his right under the First Amendment to make those statements, because as a comedy writer myself, I understand that if he cannot go out here and make his jokes, then I won't be able to make my jokes when I go out here and write shows like when I wrote the All About Nikki's fabulous first season, where I basically went out here and got really raw with this story of the spoiled, rotten black girl from Beverly Hills. And in the first couple of episodes of All About Nikki, I really go hard in the paint as related to many sorts of topics, as related to race and class. So I understand if I'm writing comedy, I'm gonna have to go and really go hard if I really want to make a commentary about the world. And that's all part of the whole process of comedy, is you've got to go hard in order to get the laughs, and you have to go out and make in order to get the laughs, you have to make observations about things that may make some people uncomfortable, but the whole thing is that you're making the observations as related to life experience, and sometimes those life experiences are ones that we don't really feel comfortable about. Unfortunately, this guy basically felt uncomfortable about the Los Angeles Lakers winning the NBA Finals and somebody questioning the validity of it. But the whole thing is that even though you feel a certain way about this team, you shouldn't be acting impulsively on your feelings about that team, because I doubt LeBron James is gonna go out here and pay for this guy and his nephew's legal fees as related to any lawsuit. And if these guys had charges put on them, I doubt LeBron James and Antonio Davis would send them a penny as related to any sort of legal defense. That's why when you go into a place like a comedy club, you've got to be able to, again, not only navigate through your emotions, where you feel the emotion, but you don't act on the emotion, and you have to critically think and understand, okay, this is part of a comedy set, and since it's a part of a comedy set, then I'm just going to let it roll off me and go on with my business because, yeah, it's a comedy set, but I don't have to take it personally. Now, when you're at a comedy club, it's not going to be a place where you think you can just feel like, oh, I can act on my feelings. No, it's a place where you've got to have, again, strong discipline and self-control, because if you go up on that stage, there's a possibility of you winding up losing your freedom over something as trivial as a joke. And it won't be a joke if one of these guys winds up in a jail cell or a road to the penitentiary where they're running into Bubba, Tiny, Roscoe, Big Dave, Melvin, and Mr. Sprinkles, and they're trading their backsides for Little Debbie snack cakes, Raymond noodles, packets of Crystal Light lemonade, packets of Crystal Light tea, snack pack puddings, peppermint balls, off-brand lemon cookies, off-brand Oreo cookies, off-brand duplex cookies, off-brand chocolate chip cookies, and all other packets of soy sauce and other commissary. I mean, that's losing your dignity because somebody said something you don't like. That's too much of a sacrifice to make. And that's what this whole Charleston White situation really makes me think about as related to things. Now, what it further makes me think about things is the sad state of America, that we can't have comedy because many of these people, like these social justice warriors and these people caught up in political correctness, get so incensed that they want to attack people for just going out here and telling a joke or making a humorous observation about the world. I mean, it's really sad that we live in a different world than I grew up in the 1980s, where comedy was basically a way of life. I mean, we had so many comedy movies out there in the 80s, and we had all sorts of sitcoms, and people loved to laugh. But these days, people are just so tense, and a lot of people, I can't believe, are so tense because they're so caught up in all of this polarizing politics as related to the far left and the far right, that they cannot take a minute to just laugh about life or laugh about observations about life. And again, that's really sad for me because I remember a day where you could just go out here and tell a joke and have a laugh, but you can't seem to even enjoy that little thing in life because we've got all of these extremely fragile people who cannot take a joke about anything. And it's a shame because comedians do a great job of making observations about the world that really make us think about life and think about how we're living in this life. That's something I do when I go out here and I write comedies like All About Nikki's fabulous first season, or when I do romantic comedies like Spinsterella, or even do stories like I do in the Esteem series. I write a lot of different styles of comedy, and in each of them I try to make commentaries about life in between the jokes and the punchlines. And it's a shame that people these days are so sensitive they cannot take a joke or see the observations a comedian or a comedy writer is making about life, because everything has to fit within the lens of your political correctness, or what some people call woke, but I just call immature people, and they don't want to see anything as related to humor because everything offends them, and if everything offends you, then you're not really living an abundant life like God wants to give us. No, you're living in a stifling life situation where you're going to be miserable in the company of others, and that's not a life worth living, because a life without laughter isn't a life without living, and you can't really enjoy life unless you can have a laugh or laugh at something. And I was one of those guys who was sitting there as this pandemic has gone on and we've gone through this political polarization from the far left and the far right. I have been saying for years, we really do need a comedy to really get people laughing, because people have been put through so much tension and stress that we really do need to go through a comedy to let people know that it's okay to laugh. And I was thinking of writing a comedy myself. I had one called Dude, Where's the Bathroom? To show how absurd a situation could be as related to a guy trying to find a bathroom. But the whole thing is that people today are so fragile. They don't know how to laugh, and it's a shame. I mean, it's a shame that you go to a comedy set these days and people want to fight instead of understanding, hey, this is just a guy making some observations and he's meaning to be funny. He don't mean nothing personal about it. He don't know anybody in that audience. I mean, Charleston White, yes, he is a minstrel and a clown, but the whole thing is he didn't know nobody in that audience and how they felt about the Los Angeles Lakers, and they had no right to attack this man as related to his observations, because any person who's navigating through their emotions while they have that feeling about being offended, they know that their actions are to go out here and leave the building. I mean, that's your solution if a comedian is doing something in a set you don't like. What you do is get up out of your seat, go and leave the club, or you go leave the place where he's performing. Or if he's saying something too insensitive, what you do is go into the bathroom and cool off, or you go and get yourself a drink if you're at the bar and you cool yourself down. You work through your emotions, and as you work through your emotions, you go out here and move on, because life is too short to go out here and get into a fight with a guy like Charleston White and wind up losing your freedom, because as you're sitting in there with Bubba, Tiny, Roscoe, Big Dave, Melvin, and Mr. Sprinkles, and they're basically trading your backside, and Mr. Sprinkles is getting ready to spray that special sauce all over your grill, guys like Charleston White are moving on to their next book set, and they're going out here making money, while the inmates in the penitentiary are making commissary off your backside. I mean, there's just too much to lose as related to these situations, and you got to learn how to control yourself when you're related to dealing with a comedy club. I mean, this is something that I'm seeing as related to a trend, and I'm hoping it doesn't escalate to the point where one of these guys who is so fragile decides to pull a firearm or a weapon and attack a comedian and put their life in jeopardy, because this, again, isn't the first time this has happened, and it's got to be stopped and nipped in the bud by club owners and event owners as related to security, because people need to understand, if you go to a comedy set, you're going to possibly get cooked or roasted if you're on the stage and the comedian sees you and wants to make an observation. Chances are they may go out here and go get the coleslaw and have a barbecue, and you've got to be able to take the heat when you step into that comedy club and listen to that comedian. I mean, that's all part of the business of comedy, and sadly we've got people who don't understand how comedy works, and that's the scary part about this whole situation, is that we've got these men in crisis, and these men in crisis are turning comedy into something that's not a joke. Now, if you want to pick up some of the comedies I have written, like All About Nikki the Fabulous first season, A Recipe for Success, or Spinsterella, or The Thetas, you can find all of those books along with some of the Esteem series books that feature comedy on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them at other online booksellers like Smashworth, the iBookstore, Google Play, and Barnes & Noble. And if you'd like to see me make more videos about the entertainment industry, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes' Godbreaker, The man who rules the world takes on the Asgardian god of thunder in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes Godbreaker in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, All About the Goddess. The goddess next door bears all in the art studio to catch a campus stalker in this action-packed Isis series mystery. Get your copy of Isis, All About the Goddess in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.